we've gone through a couple of different stages of the process. Stage number 1, create the foundation of a LinkedIn profile, put in all of the basics. Phase number 2 is adding all of these additional pieces of information to really add more flavor to your profile. We've just finished a conversation now about what goes into a resume, what goes onto LinkedIn. So by this stage, if you've done all of these things, you've got a pretty good LinkedIn profile for yourself. Now, how are you going to get people to notice you on LinkedIn? So, as with any social media, you want to build a network for yourself. The first place to start is with people that you already know. So one of the greatest things about LinkedIn, if you haven't done this already, you can search all of your contacts in Gmail, in Hotmail, in Outlook, and you can connect with people that are within your address book who are also on LinkedIn. You can also, using those 3 sources of contacts that you currently have, you can invite people to join LinkedIn. It's the first place that you start, with people who are already part of your social network, part of your professional network, people who you already know, okay? That's a feature that's easily accessible on LinkedIn, and if you haven't done it yet, you really should. The next thing that you can do is any places that you've worked in the past, you want to make sure that you add them to your to LinkedIn. You want to also make sure any educational institutions that you have attended, that you've put that in your LinkedIn profile. We've talked about that already. Once you've done that, you can click on those organizations and you can see people who are part of those organizations' networks. So you can start to build your own connections list from LinkedIn by looking through other people who have been part of the same organizations. So for example, for me, because I work at United Way, I can easily click on United Way and see all of the people I know who work at United Way and invite them to be my connections. You look at their LinkedIn profile and you think, like, we have a lot in common, or that person works in a field that I'd like to get into. I'd like to add them to my connections, but you don't know one another, so you don't have a personal connection. I've done that before, and what I do is, as you are sending an invitation to connect in LinkedIn, you have the option of adding a little message. And there's a default message. I think it says, I'd like to add you to my network on LinkedIn, right? I don't ever use that. I always personalize the message. So in a case like the one you're describing, I might say, Rashan, we've never met before, but I notice that you work in a field that I'm looking to get into. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind, could I add you to my LinkedIn network? Most often when you do that, people will accept, right? But it can sometimes be odd if you're just adding people that you have no connection to. In fact, to the question that was asked earlier about quality versus quantity, there are some people who use LinkedIn just to build connections. They have lists that are 500, 700, 1,000, 2,000 people, and yet they have no real relationships with anybody that they're connected to on LinkedIn. I don't personally see the value in building that kind of network or building those kind of connections. I think it's very important that your LinkedIn connections be broad. If you work in multiple areas or you have many different interests, you should have connections that represent all of these areas. So it should be broad, but there should be focus to the network that you're building, focus to the connections that you're bringing in. And one of the best ways of bringing in connections who you don't already know is to just send that little note. Explain to them why it is you're asking to connect with them. I first started to do this early on when I first started using LinkedIn, when somebody tried to connect with me and I'm like, I don't know who that person is. I just rejected the connection. They tried again a little while later and then they explained, you know, I see that you attended, or I saw your name was on a conference that we both attended a couple of years ago, and I'd just like to keep in touch. Then I had some context for why they were asking, and then I accepted them into my network. So I think that's one thing you can do, just explain why. So start with your existing contacts, then go to the institutions that you've attended. Then the next thing that you do is make a list of people that aren't in your contacts, that aren't related to schools that you've gone to or places that you've worked, and you can individually search for those people on LinkedIn. When you find those people, as I said, don't just send them the default invitation. Explain why it is you want to connect with them. Even people that I know quite well, or even people that I know well enough that they would know why I'm trying to connect with them, I still send them a personalized note. I think it's a nice thing to do when you're building your connections on LinkedIn. Okay? Now, the more you participate in LinkedIn, the more features become available to you. And one of the things that's going to start becoming more and more available is a feature called People You May Know. So it's going to bring up some options of people who are not currently in your network, but people who you may very well know. Go through that list, and as I was saying earlier, the more you participate, the more content is going to become available. You'll see more and more people that come up in that. You can also do this thing, which I really like on LinkedIn. Who has viewed your profile? If you click on that, you can see all of the people who have been looking at your profile. So People You May Know is a great feature. Who has viewed your profile is a great feature. And then, as I said, I sometimes will think of people. They don't show up in any of my People You May Know searches. They've never looked at my profile. But they're people that I want to get to know. I'll just make a note of them, and I'll search for them up here. So, in a case like, if we imagine that I wasn't yet connected to Fei Tang, there's a great way for us to search for Fei. And if we were not yet connected, we could connect using this. Okay? Now, a couple of notes of caution on this, okay? Avoid the common mistakes. Don't add people just for the sake of adding people. Don't look like you're trying too hard to network. You don't want to add random people. You want them to be connected to companies that you're interested in working at, the sector or the field or the industry where you have experience or you're looking for work, or people that you've legitimately met. To my way of thinking, it's just those three universes that are of interest to you. I have many people who try to connect with me on LinkedIn who are just trying to build a network, and there's no value in that. At the end of the day, it doesn't help you and it doesn't really help them. So don't be random.